very, very wild story. I was at the top of my game for my career, traveling the world globally. I was living in Fort Lauderdale. It was weird because during that time, I appeared to be very successful, but internally, I was actually really sad, being that I was always on the road or moving. For whatever reason, in 2017, I really started to turn on my faith, and I had this really God-sized awakening. And in a matter of moments, I felt like God spoke to me and told me to change directions and leave everything behind, quit my job, and move to Hawaii. So literally, I get this information on like a Saturday, and on Monday, I called my boss, quit my job.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of RealTalks podcast. I have a good friend of mine who I actually met about 3 years ago. As some of you know, I have a recruiting agency, and me and my guest, her name is Kelly. She owns a recruiting agency as well, but in a different niche. But I'd let her introduce herself. But a little bit about Kelly's bias. She spent 13 years in corporate America, and then from there, she walked away from the comfort of having a stable income with her job. She moved to Hawaii on her own and then launched her very own company, which is called Acclaim Recruiters, which is a pretty cool name. And along the way, she found the love of her life, Akeem, who's also a Navy veteran and an active duty Air Force service member. So kudos to your husband, Kelly. As you know, I'm a Navy vet, and I have a huge appreciation for our service members, active and reserves as well. So Kelly, thanks for joining me. You are the very first Recruiter Empire coaching member in the show. So I'm very excited actually, because I've interviewed quite a few different entrepreneurs and business owners, but nobody in recruiting. Like I'm always the only one. So super cool to have you here, and it's exciting. We get to share your journey. But with that being said, for our viewers and our listeners, Kelly, just quick introduction about yourself, and then I'll then follow up with some questions in regards to that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jay, thanks for having me on. Appreciate and thank you for your service, serving this country. That's amazing. Yeah, so Kelly Dockrell. Now I'm Kelly Brown. I was married back in December of 2024 after many years of praying and waiting. But so yeah, as you mentioned in my bio, I spent 13 years in corporate America, specifically within the logistics transportation industry. Back then, my vertical was aviation aerospace. That afforded me kind of a life of luxury in terms of, I was in my early 30s, I was making great money, had the opportunity to travel, live in different locations, travel the world. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I was in golden handcuffs. It wasn't the career that I had pursued. It was a career that I kind of fell into by accident in college. And as a young college kid, I started making decent money. And then you wake up one day and you're like, whoa, wait a second. Like, what am I still doing? This wasn't supposed to be a career. This was supposed to be an internship. It was wild, but needless to say, most people within that industry, I compare it to that song Hotel California, where they say you're free to go, but you'll never leave. And most people in the freight industry working for big companies, it's golden handcuffs. And then you're kind of stuck in a career because it's just so niche and it's what you learn and what you know. And to grind to the top takes a lot of time, but there's money in it as well.
Dropping that lifestyle, that life of comfort and I guess confidence of like not really having to have money problems. But what pushed you to get into entrepreneurship and being your own boss as a business owner?
Yeah, well, it's actually a very, very wild story. 2017, I was at the top of my game for my career, traveling the world globally. I was living in Fort Lauderdale, but it was weird because during that time, I appeared to be very successful, but internally, I was actually really sad. I wanted a husband, I wanted, a family and that lifestyle. Being that I was always on the road or moving, it wasn't happening. So for whatever reason, in 2017, I really started to turn on my faith, and I had this really God-sized awakening. And in a matter of moments, I felt like God spoke to me and told me to change directions and leave everything behind, quit my job, and move to Hawaii. So literally, I get this information on like a Saturday, and on Monday, I called my boss, quit my job. Yeah, so then I started on this wild journey to get from Fort Lauderdale to Hawaii. But here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that even though you're making a lot of money for, a variable amount of time, you're also trying to, you're spending that money keeping up with the lifestyle. So whether it's the expensive car, the condo, or whatever. So it's funny because when you take away a paycheck, you really don't have much left over. And I was in my early 30s. So I did, when I quit my job, I recognized that I needed to take the cheapest route to get to Hawaii. Plus, a lot of people don't know it's very difficult to get dogs into Hawaii because they don't have rabies. So there's a long, long process and it takes months. So what I did, so I basically went from like this corporate bougie girl living like this amazing life, eating at steakhouses every other night, to then like a homeless journey living in the wilderness to get to Hawaii. And it's a wild story because I never like had been camping before, but I camped out, and in order to conserve the rest of the small lump of sum of money that I had to basically get to Hawaii to live more simple life, so to speak. So, that's why I just published my book about this. It's called Acclaimed Journey to Aloha. And it's
I don't know if you and I spoke about it before, but can you show that again? Because let's promote your book. I know how difficult it is to work on those, as you know, but Acclaimed Journey to Aloha, that's great. How many pages and what is the book all about?
Yeah, so the book is 62 pages, and Jay, you wrote a book too. So it's I don't have children, but it is like giving birth to, creating life out of something from nothing.
Time consuming, Kelly, and I think offline I was telling you, like, you and I both believe in coaching, right? You and I both learned from our Ben Nader is actually my very first like business coach in the recruiting niche, and he taught me a lot. And for you and I both obviously believe in that, and we'll talk a little bit more later on. And regarding your decisions, though, to being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, getting into recruiting, and then obviously now I want to talk about running, the book writing. What inspired you to write about the book, and what is the book all about?
Yeah. Okay. So I had this crazy journey about being a corporate, successful saleswoman. And then all of a sudden I'm on this homeless journey to Hawaii with just me, my dog, and my 9mm, really, and my Dodge Challenger. That's how I got there.
You've been focused in your career. You're like one of those independent boss women, got a great corporate job, living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So for people that are not familiar with Fort Lauderdale, I actually freaking that being around 10X in Grant Cardone, because that's where the headquarters is at, actually in Aventura. So it's not too far. But Fort Lauderdale, guys, if you haven't seen it, it's very close to Miami. To me, Fort Lauderdale is actually better than Miami, to be honest.
By far, by far.
It's got everything, but nonetheless, like, that's a complete lifestyle change. Miami is Fort Lauderdale. It's all about bougie, having luxury things, expensive cars. If you live in a condo or an apartment, it's one of those bougie style ones.
Yeah. Oh, I had an incredibly bougie life. It was very bougie.
Caught up with that lifestyle, and I love it. Actually, I do love that lifestyle. But you're absolutely right. You mentioned, like, you get caught up with it.
So it's funny because what I felt like I was pushed to do through faith was to give up everything. And I literally, over the course of maybe a month, maybe a little over a month, I took everything I'd ever owned in my home, put it outside with a free sign, and everything just went. Even like, yeah, like scrapbooks, yearbooks,
You just
pictures.
you like,
I literally got rid of everything. Yeah.
wow, what?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got to touch on that. Like, what made? I know you mentioned that you got this God sense and that He spoke to you. I've gotten something like that in the past where um, I felt like the Holy Spirit, and I'm not like super religious. I have a faith in God. I'm Catholic by, I guess,
Birth.
by birth, and but yeah, I don't necessarily truly always practice the Catholic side. Although, like, my relationship with God is strong, in my opinion. But like, how that was a drastic move.
It's wild. That's what. So that kind of gets me to the point where, like, it's such a wild, wild, wild story. And when you really dig into it, that's what caused me. So in 2018, I left Fort Lauderdale in November of 2017, and it took until March of 2018 to arrive in Hawaii. Of course, like, when I got there, I felt like God called me there. So I was like, okay, I'm here. Where's my husband? Where's this great life? Where's everything that you promised me? But that's not how it happened, and that's not how my God works. So in 2018, I knew it was a wild story because I lived it.
Yeah.
I felt that the Lord had put it on my heart to write it down. And I remember seeing a quote because we're both big into like motivational people and podcasts and everything. And I saw this quote where, it starts with one step, one glass of water, one page. So I thought to myself, if I can write one page a day, at the end of a year, I'll have 365 pages, right? So it did. It became kind of addicting to write down my story. And the cool thing about the book that I wrote is that I was very good at tracking everything along my journey because I journal and I was just kind of taking notes. So it is very detailed. So fast forward, I'm living in Hawaii, still kind of like waiting for the Lord to like reveal what I'm supposed to be doing here. And that's when a lot of the desires of my heart started to get fulfilled. One of the things, like when I was 16, I used to call myself DJ Killer Kells. And this was back when we used to make like mixtapes and all that. And I used to, make up names for my mixtapes. Well, it turned out I got turned on to a DJ company in Hawaii, and I became the number one DJ for the Big Island. So that now all of a sudden I go from a corporate executive to hosting massive weddings at like the biggest resorts in Kona. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so I was DJ Killer Kells, DJ MC. Yeah. I worked at a golf course, and then I ended up a company. What's that?
Yeah. Before that, like being a DJ to doing sales for corporate America, right, in the aviation field as well. That's a completely different shift. Question though, like, was this a passion of yours younger, and then you want to just get back into it for now until you find whatever it is that you were looking for? Is it right?
No, 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 no. No, it happened by accident because what happened was I was volunteering when I was in Hawaii for a hospice group, and I met a guy. I was at the same time I was volunteering because I was really just trying to find my niche. And it was the time I got to explore life a little. I also enjoyed an improv group on the Big Island where we'd meet once a week and we'd do improv. And, I wasn't great at it, but everybody else was really funny. And then from meeting people through hospice, they connected me with somebody that would be into coming to improv. So I called this guy up and I was like, hey, I hear you're interested in improv. What do you do for a living? And he's like, man, I got the best job. I get paid like $40 an hour to DJ weddings. I'm like, that's crazy. That's like my dream job. And he's like, oh, I'll hook you up with the owner. I showed up for like just some wedding and they hired me on the spot. And they were like, dude, you're made to do this. And then within like maybe a month, I became the number one requested DJ on the island. And these are big, big weddings because people fly from all over the world to come to Hawaii to get married.
Absolutely. Kona is so beautiful. I definitely see like there's a lot of like expats, from all over the world, rich expats that move to Hawaii. Yeah. Specifically
Yeah.
Kona. I do like Kona as well. But so you did the DJing part. How long did that last before you said, all right, I'm going to start my own recruiting agency? So how did that come about, Kelly?
While I was on the island, I did a lot of random jobs. I was a nanny for wealthy families that came to visit. I was a DJ, got $15 an hour to work part-time at a golf course doing marketing, but free golf, which was cool. And then I actually got hired for a company that does air ambulance. So I would sell memberships because in Hawaii, the only level 1 trauma center is in Oahu. So I was hired to sell corporate memberships to the big resorts. Yeah, and you have to hustle to live in Hawaii because it's so expensive. It seems kind of all bright and shiny. And I talk about these times in my book because it was tough because I was still like waiting to find the love of my life and a husband. And that was like tough. But so needless to say, I had been in Hawaii for 3.5 years doing all these random jobs. The air ambulance company I was working for, they were like, yeah, we really want you in Arizona. We want to relocate you to Arizona and then cover that territory. And for me, I was like, I felt like the Lord had told me I was going to meet my husband in Hawaii. There was a purpose there. And I'm like, dude, what the heck? Like, I'm going to leave and my purpose and prophecy hasn't been fulfilled. Well, sure enough, I was trying to fight leaving the island and started kind of reaching out to different companies to see if I could get a job locally. But I didn't know it was my time to go. So one night, so this would have been September of 2021, I couldn't sleep. And so back then I was kind of learning meditation, but I'm also really into prayer. So I couldn't sleep. So I just kind of sat there in silence and I was meditating. And in that moment, God downloaded into me to start a recruiting company, just downloaded the whole framework. Now, like that night, I really, really couldn't sleep because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to start my own company. This is crazy. I called my mom the next day. And years prior, when I lived in Miami, I used to own a matchmaking company. It was called Allure Matchmakers. So in my head, I always want my company to start with the letter A. So I called my mom and I was like, hey, I'm starting a company. Give me a letter that starts, or give me a name that starts with A. And she said Acclaimed. So for me, Acclaim Recruiters was kind of giving it to the Lord because I acclaim him and his sovereignty. So that was a Sunday I couldn't sleep. Monday I launched the company. Tuesday I was going down the rabbit hole of YouTube University, found Ben Nader, and I reached out to him because he in this world was just, he was the guru. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, I need to buy some contracts because I'm starting a company. He's like, I can't sell you contracts. You have to join my program. So 3 days from starting the idea of my recruiting company, I hired my coach, which was your coach as well. And then, yeah, so that was where it conceptualized when I was still in Hawaii, preparing to move back to Arizona. When I would first hop on the calls with you, I was in my ohana in Hawaii.
Yeah, I remember that. And then a little bit after that, you moved. And I'm assuming this is where you met Akeem.
That's the fun story. I leave Hawaii after this crazy journey getting there 3.5 years prior. And I leave and I'm just like disappointed because I was like, I should have met my husband there. Like, why am I leaving? When I leave Hawaii to move back to the mainland, it was a circus. It was everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. The shipping company totaled my brand new Jeep, just totaled it. Didn't tell me about it. I show up in San Diego to pick it up and they're like, oh, our bad. Your Jeep's totaled. The Acclaim Recruiters, when I launched it, I immediately got blacklisted. So my domain was shut down. Everything shut down. I couldn't get an email out. I couldn't do any, marketing whatsoever. And I was putting my blood, sweat, and tears into this because I felt as though that was like what God was telling me to do. When I got to Scottsdale, I couldn't find a place to live. I ended up with an awful roommate, awful. So everything was just like, now, what's interesting is that I met.
When you went to Arizona, right? But you were still working for the same company, right?
Yeah.
You ended up, okay, cool. Got it. Okay, go ahead.
But I was still trying to launch my recruiting company because I felt like that was God was telling me to do. Now, here's the funny thing. So I met Akeem in April of 2021. He was on a boys' trip to Kona. Now, if anybody's ever been to Kona, Hawaii, you don't take a boys' trip to Kona. There's like literally nothing to do there. So he was on a boys' trip and we met. We had one date. It was probably the greatest date I'd ever been on. And we never kept in touch. So we didn't do social media. We didn't call. We didn't text. Like, we met, sayonara, have a great life. He was based in California at the time at the Air Force Base in Vacaville. So I get to Arizona the following year and everything's a muck in my life. I mean, it's chaos. And he randomly looked me up and he saw that I was in Arizona. So he reached out in January and said, hey, I just found out I'm going to PCS to Arizona and I saw that you're there. Let's link up when I arrive. So sure enough, he arrives and our second date was a year to the day that we met a year before. Like literally just by accident. So then he ended up proposing 3 years after that. And now here we are married and he's the most wonderful person that's ever been in my life. And he's my husband. So I did meet my husband in Hawaii, but not the way that I expected to.
Right. Okay. But I mean, in a sense, you did kind of meet Akeem there in Kona, and then a year later, you kind of
it was divine.
Found each other again. That's awesome. Now, Akeem, he's still on active duty, right? So how does he like with you in your entrepreneurship journey, Kelly? Like how I'm pretty sure he's supportive, but like, can you tell us like what's that mindset for him to like, all right, this is my fiance at the time, like she's an entrepreneur and all that stuff. Like, was it difficult for him to like adjust? Because as you know, entrepreneurship, it's up and down. We don't have truly, unless you have something dialed in, right? If you're just starting out, it's our revenue income is up and down. It's
you basically wake up every morning unemployed.
Yeah, but like for him, was he comfortable? Because he's a service member. We're taken care of. We're not rich, but we're comfortable.
Akeem, he was so impressed by me because remember, he met me as a Hawaiian DJ. And then when he shows back up a year later, I was like, by the way, I'm an entrepreneur now. So for him, when on our second date, he was just asking a ton of questions about what it was like being a DJ. And he was really engaged in that. But now, like, he'll tell you he doesn't know anybody in his entire existence that's an entrepreneur. And he's so proud of that fact. That's something that he likes to brag about. But now that we're married, he sees the ebbs and flows. And as much as we want to put out there on social media, like, yay, winning, it's not always that. The other thing too is like he doesn't know anybody in his existence that's ever published a book. So I think he's proud of the fact that, like, I kind of go on my own path versus, in the military, you walk to the beat of their drum.
Yep.
So I definitely see there's a synergy between us because I couldn't go to work every day wearing his uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Not my cup of tea. This is how I show up to work every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
But he's definitely supportive.
that's great. I'm glad to hear all of that stuff. Like with what you've been trying, not trying, but what you've been manifesting, and although it took a little bit longer, I guess, but you're very happy now. And then sometimes we have our own, I guess, journey, whatever, in life, and sometimes it just takes a little longer. But I mean, if I could tell that he's making you very happy, and I'm sure it's vice versa. So that's super dope. And I mean, I don't think he thinks, or you know what I mean, like I'm sure he's very, very proud of what you've accomplished. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. I've told this to many, many others. You have to have a thick skin, you have to be patient, and you have to be adaptable as well, right? Because you always have to like pivot if you need to.
Pivot, 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 pivot. Every year I've had this business, I've pivoted every single year, multiple times a year. The first year through Ben's program, we all had our unique way of marketing that was successful 3, 4 years ago. That doesn't work anymore. Had to pivot. And then you discover what you're good at and what you're not good at, and maybe outsource that portion of it.
100%.
So it's a continual. I posted something on my social media today just about the art of the pivot. Keep pivoting in life. And a lot of people get so stuck and grounded that they don't want to take the risk. And I remember when, like, I first got to Arizona and my business was not taking off, and I was literally crying all the time because I was like, I know what I was called to do. Why is this failing me? And I remember hearing Steve Harvey said one time, he said, put yourself in a position that failure is not an option. Because a lot of people go out and they'll take a risk because they have a plan B. That plan B is what's holding you back. So you need to go out there. Failure is not an option. If this doesn't work, you're going to be homeless on the streets. And that was the approach that I took in it. And I just went full in. And then once it hits, then and all of a sudden it continues to overflow. But there's a couple people from our group that I would tell them, like, listen, if once you started your company and you didn't have the trials and tribulations, you wouldn't be humble. You would go in there and probably be very cocky and very, just ahead of yourself. And the trials and tribulations that we go through are what keep us humble because it's ebbs and flows. I mean, it's tough,
It is.
sleepless nights or, again, you wake up unemployed every day. Who wants that?
Right. But I mean, there's so much positive things that you can get on being an entrepreneur. Although a lot of people don't really see the behind the scenes that we have to deal with, mentally, physically, emotionally, and everything else, right? But I love the fact that you mentioned one thing about shifting your mindset of not like having other options. Like there's no quitting, and that's actually my mindset when I came into recruiting. That's because in the military, right? We can't quit, we can't complain, we just have to do the job and do it well the first time. And if it doesn't, you got to do whatever it takes to get your mission accomplished, whether you have to work 48 hours straight or you know what I mean, somehow have a plan, right? So the military mindset is like that, and that's helped me out in this side of like the the entrepreneurship world, because it is up and down. If you don't have a thick skin, you don't have a strong heart, you're gonna quit.
Big
And
time.
that's the problem, right? People quit because you go through these up and downs, and when it hits bottom, it hits. And sometimes in my mindset, it's like, all right, now the bottom is here. There's only one way, and that's up. And that's pretty much have helped me because you're right. You only see, you mentioned, with social media, we only show the good parts, right? The good things. And it's hard for us to show and be vulnerable to talk about all of the bad things that happens behind the scenes. But I mean, for you, not quitting, like that's already a recipe for success. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the pivoting part. Not quitting and learning how to pivot when you need to are good combination to be successful. So that's awesome. And for you, like why recruiting? I mean, I know you did sales and everything you did
Oh,
in
I do have a
marketing.
perfect explanation.
Yeah,
So back in 2014, people like us, Jay, we've always pursued motivational speakers, self-help books, like all, that's just who we are. So
right.
back in 2014, I read the book The 4 Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. And I mean, it was brilliant, especially for its time, like talking about VAs, and it's still a brilliant book even today. And I remember my one takeaway from that book. He posed the question, "What is the greatest asset and ability that you have that relates to your career?" So I was like, "Easy. I'm a networker. I could put two
Yeah,
people together for purpose."
that's right.
So I knew back then I should have been a recruiter, especially because in my career I used to get hit up by recruiters all the time, and I'm like, "Dude, I can do your job." But instead, and I was living in Miami. Instead, what I did was I pivoted, and that's how I opened a matchmaking company in Miami. So it was called Allure Matchmakers. I really loved building the company, but once I had the company between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, you'd have these girls that, worked as like a school teacher or maybe no education at all, and they want to be matched with the basketball players or, the NFL players. Yeah, it was like you couldn't get people to get, it was terrible. I hated it. So it's funny because during that time in Miami, there was a matchmaking TV show, like a reality show that was coming to town. They interviewed my company, but then they ended up just buying my company to get because they needed guests for the show. So I was like, ah, good thing I'm out of that. So that's why it's ironic that I got down. I can't tell you that I sat there and like, okay, what am I going to do? I could just tell you that it was in that moment of silence and being still and listening that it got downloaded in me to start the recruiting company. So in a matter of 48 hours, I basically went from no idea of a future plan to like having a full blown well seed company with a coach.
That's so
Because when you're called to act on something, a lot of people will drag their feet and look in all different directions. I mean, for me, like I'm just a go getter. Like, let's do this.
that's
I'm sure, I didn't necessarily have the money to pull together at the time to pay a career coach, but I did it, and I didn't think about it. And I mean, as you can imagine, the 10x, the 20x, the 100x on what we spent on that program. I mean, it's a game changer.
absolutely. Like, I mean, this is some great conversations and keeping it real. And for me, Kelly, it was, man, like I, I told myself 5 years before I got out of the military, I said, you know what? Um, it's great to serve, do something bigger than yourself. But now I need to be selfish. I need to build for myself, for my family, and, for my kids. So I'm like, I'm going to take a risk. I know who I am as a person. I'm a hard charger. I'm a hustler, just like you. That's why in my mentality, Kelly, like you have that hustler mentality. Like it's hard to fail. You go through a lot of hardship, but
Yeah.
having a mindset of not quitting, we always come out on top, right? But like my life has changed making this decision. I always tell people like if you could afford to take a risk, take it because it's better to just try something that you've been wanting to do. And if you fail at it, at least you know you tried. But if you have that no fail mentality, you'll actually truly, you don't always fail if you don't quit, right? So that's why adapting and pivoting is so crucial to success in a business. I mean, it's been about 3 years so far, Kelly. Have you thought about like pivoting again out of the recruiting industry, or is it something that you personally feel like, all right, this is my niche. I'm just gonna continue to grow and scale this business.
I definitely love recruiting. I feel as though I'm very good at it, and I I love finding people careers, and a year later, they're like, "Man, Cal, you changed my life. Like, this is amazing." But for anybody that's known me for a long time, knows that like I'm always, up to something else because I don't know. It's like, it's not even like I want to tackle all these different things or I have a huge bucket list. It's just like, okay, what's next? Like the
Yeah.
fact that I just published my book a couple weeks ago, I'm like, okay, check that box. Like, all right, now what am I going to do? Like, that's so rando. So you never know. I mean, knowing me, I'd probably start like a wine brand or something. But you literally never know. And because I'm an Air Force wife now, every time the list comes out for us to move overseas, we're always applying. Like Italy, Germany, Spain, like let's go. So I don't know what's next for me. I continue to love recruiting and I continue to be able to like take my past 15 years in my industry and then turn that around as like an expert for the logistics industry and recruiting. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel as though I want to share my book a lot more because it's a wild story, but it's a crazy testimony and ultimately
Absolutely.
leads towards my faith. So I don't know what's next.
But
I know that I'm leaving for Chicago tomorrow to spend the weekend with my husband, and that's as far as it goes.
I love that. I love that. I mean, writing a book is such a huge, in my opinion, just going through the process of from start to finish. And it took me some time to even like complete it myself. And that's me hiring a book writing coach. All right. And everything I do now, Kelly,
You hire a coach.
I'm a business coach myself because I believe in it, but I do hire coaches for everything. From a book writing course, a coach, creating, obviously a coaching program as well. So a lot of those, like, I know, like, being able to invest in yourself professionally and personally, like, always gets us ROI back as long as we have a plan to obviously to work towards that and being the best version of that, whatever that goal was. But
I think I think if I had to create a short term goal, and what I feel like drawn to right now, I think short term, I would love the opportunity to travel and share my testimony, and share obviously like the real story of my book. Mainly, like the book really talks to because you don't know what it's like as a 30-year-old woman, you're single, you're not meeting anybody, and like you're freaking out. Like that's like the type of people that could really relate to my story because for me, the man that came around, so many years later was so much greater than what I could have imagined my husband to look like. I mean, I would have settled for half of who he is.
wow.
And yeah, like I would have settled for like way less than who he is. And on top of that, he's super freaking handsome and he's like 6'7". Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I hit the jackpot.
In uniform, tall, dark and handsome. I mean, what
Fit.
more, right?
And he's a man of God, and we're on our knees every night praying together, talking, because we walk that same path. We're equally yoked. Like, so if I had an immediate goal, I would feel as though maybe this book would be my platform to go out there and talk to people about, pivoting in life, take that next step, being a motivational speaker, I guess, if I had to sum it up.
No,
So yeah, who
absolutely.
knows?
No, I mean, like every motivational speaker that I've met and have paid to watch, they all, have stories of like being at the very bottom and being in being able to overcome that. And I think that experience is very strong. And the motivational speakers that do share that does inspire a lot of people. And I think for you, for the women that are currently going through the same thing, that's going to be basically, I think, the people that will benefit a lot from reading your book. But however, I do, I want to support it myself, and it's always great to like purchase a book with somebody that you know personally, so I always do that. Where is the book available to be purchased at this time?
Great question, Jay. So, of course, you can get it on Amazon. It's 20.99 for soft copy. There's also the Kindle version for like 3.99. I'm also in Barnes and Noble, and then the publisher is Westbow. So I think that that's kind of a dream come true because I've always been a reader as a kid. How much time, like, we're kids of the 90s. How much time do we spend in Barnes and Nobles as kids, right? So
Like, that's yeah, that's I mean, that's us growing up. We didn't have like internet really until probably high school. right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Freshman. Yeah, I remember I was.
I don't even know. Yeah. We're older than Google.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's very true. But you know what, Kelly, you and I, we look young. I mean,
Yeah.
I always say 40 is the new 30s now.
It absolutely is. Do you remember the movies from when we were kids and like the parents were like 45, but they looked like 65?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's wild. Or even like the parents, like, yeah, they're in their 30s, and you're like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, as long as you take care of your body, which I know you do, and eat right, I guess, and just I don't know, like it. I think being happy, even though you're like you go through struggles and stuff like that, it kind of helps with everything else. So, but yeah, it's pretty amazing that to hear that you've gotten your ultimate goal is finding the right man that is gonna truly make you happy. And Akeem is a godly man as well, so that's awesome. And I mean, the journey of entrepreneurship for you is still the story has not or the chapter hasn't ended yet. It's still an ongoing, between now until whatever, however long, But I'm definitely very excited to see what's in the future for you. And again, the book you wrote, congratulations! I'm definitely gonna purchase one, and I'm gonna share it to our viewers as well. And for you guys that if you want to take a look at what Kelly wrote, and maybe the women who are also in the same kind of similar life, going through what she had gone through, check out her book. It's
No, I appreciate that.
or Barnes and Noble. So that's pretty awesome. And I will be supporting that. And once I receive the book, Kelly, I'll definitely promote it in all my channels because
Yay, thanks, Jay.
I know the work that you had to put to get that book written, and we have the same kind of like the path that we're taking. Recruiting agencies completely different. I don't have a lot of network who's in the same niche as I am, so it's super cool. I'm very excited to have you here on the show, and I'm actually very excited to share your story to our viewers and our listeners. One last question that I'd like to ask before we leave and end the show, Kelly, to the people that doesn't matter, men, women, young, old, but are tired of like being stuck in their job, or in corporate America, and maybe are looking into entrepreneurship but haven't pulled the trigger yet. What would be your advice to them who are watching and listening?
I would say bet on yourself. Bet on yourself, be persistent, believe in yourself, have faith. Because guess what? That job that you've got or that you feel so secure at, if anything happened to you, they'd have that job posted before your eulogy. You're worth more to yourself than anybody that's going to give you a paycheck from week to week. So, I mean, obviously don't burn bridges, but you've got one chance at this life. Do what makes you happy. Pursue it, believe in yourself, and take risks. Put yourself in a position that failure is not an option. And believe me, there's going to be blood, sweat, and a lot of tears if you're like me. So go for it.
Tears is part of the journey, and then tears of joy is ultimately what we want later on, right? Like, hey, I've gone through all of this stuff, the sacrifices, hard work, the dedication. I'm glad I didn't quit. Thank God I was blessed with this opportunity.
Yeah.
I'd say for our viewers, I think what Kelly just shared, her advice is very strong. And I truly believe in that as well. So thank you for sharing that, Kelly. For people that want to connect with you, where would they be able to find you other than Facebook? Are you on LinkedIn, Instagram?
LinkedIn. Love LinkedIn.
Awesome.
LinkedIn is awesome. It's great for networking.
Networking and for sure finding, our future clients and everything else.
Tracking you down for a job.
Well, thank you so much for.
Thank you, Jay.
I look forward to continued growth in your business, and certainly, if there's anything I can do, later on, you know how to find me. We've been connected in the last 3.5 years, and I'm always going to be rooting for you. We're on the same.
Same here. I love watching your journey, Jay. It's been very impressive.
And yeah, it's a lot of hard work. You and I both know what we have to do behind the scenes. But guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this show. I hope you were inspired by Kelly's story. And again, follow her on LinkedIn. She's also on Facebook as well if you want to hit her up there also. But nonetheless, if you guys did enjoy this, please like and subscribe. We'll see you at the next episode. Take care.